Hello and welcome back to This Podcast Counts as Socializing. We're your hosts, Nick and Kayla, and today we're joined by the lovely and talented Abby. Would you want to introduce yourself, Abby?
Hello, my name is Abby, as Nick said. My friends call me Gail, which I'm sure you'll hear that at some point.
Yeah, we're hoping if Abby has enough wine tonight, Gail will come out and everyone will get to meet her too. Abby, I do have a little... We need to get Gail, live and on camera.
Mm-hmm.
Abby, I have a little conversation starter question for you to kind of help our audience get to know you a little bit and help Nick and I get to know you a little bit more. So my question for you is, what solo Olympic sport do you think you could compete in and not get last?
Ooh. None athletic like that. I think,
No, but there's a lot of swimming.
Yeah, but the solo ones are so hard, Kayla.
I know, but I was like, swimming was the one where I was like, I'm getting last. Like,
does she get time to train?
Like, she gets the amount of time to train in this. Yeah, let's say you have a year of training to prepare.
I'm
picturing in swimming,
still
they've
in the
finished and I'm on the second. I think speedwalking is. I think I could not get last in speedwalking.
That seems
if
doable.
I had a year to train.
Yeah. See, I don't know, all the Olympics, all the different sports. I just know, the main ones. So I'm like, I don't know.
I think I could not get last in that one where you sit on the horse and the horse does all the dancing.
There's horse dancing?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a video of Snoop Dogg commentating
it's
it. And he's like, the horse is crip walking.
He is, yeah. They make the horse crip walk. I think if the horse was trained for you, I think it wouldn't be too bad because you just have to learn how to tell it to do the things. I also think if Jamaica was still competing in the bobsled, it's possible that you could eke out
I was gonna say, Abby, I think you could not get last in bobsledding. You're pretty lightweight, and that's a big factor.
You know I can thrash my head like no other.
Exactly. So I think maybe I don't know if your back could take that though.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm thinking about for half of these because I was
maybe the skeleton
whenever I watched the Olympics. Yeah, whenever I watched the Olympics, I was always like gymnastics. I always wanted to be able to do it because they look so great.
Mm-hmm.
But
you would need way more of a year of training, I think, though.
Do what?
I think you need more of a year of training for that.
Oh, for sure. No, that was just all in my head. I thought I could do it.
No, that's all. I also agree. I've always if I could do one and be good at it, that one would be so fun.
Mm-hmm.
That and ice dancing.
Yes.
And rhythmic gymnastics. All of the performative ones.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're only one person away from a curling team. Just saying.
I think that's right. Okay, us together, we could win curling.
Who would be the curling members?
All right.
I think
if we have to add one more?
Yeah.
Maybe Gabby. She's the most athletic out of all of us currently.
True. I think I'd have to be the tosser. Or not the server.
The chucker.
Yeah.
The pusher,
sure.
I don't really know what the terms are, quite honestly.
Or the other three people
sweepers,
just sweeping?
I think. They have a broom. Mm-hmm. I think so.
It's
right, I guess
3-person teams and also maybe 4-person teams. I feel like they have different categories.
Yeah,
I guess Abby's chucking, Nick and I are sweeping.
I like it. All right. You know, speaking
All right, Nick,
of
what do you
ice,
have for us today?
I've got for us Ernest Shackleton's Antarctic expedition. Kind of two.
I'm really excited.
He's been on a couple, and this, the one that we're going to talk about today is the failure that actually was really successful and really interesting. But before we get into that, we got to talk about the well-known Antarctic expeditions. So the two big ones that everyone knows happened in 1911. You got the Norwegian expedition left by Roald Amundsen, which arrived first in typical Nordic fashion. It was well planned, it was efficient, it was fast. They had their sled dogs that they were very familiar with. They lived with sled dogs up in Norway. So these were all things, the icy ocean was familiar to them. This was all familiar terrain in some respect to the Norwegians because they lived in Norway. They had all this, whaling infrastructure up north, and it wasn't too hard for them. And then, of course, there's the British expedition. led by Robert Falcon Scott, in which they reached the South Pole only to find the Norwegian flag there waiting for them. And of course, they all died on the journey back to the boats from the South Pole.
Wait, pause. This is
Probably
the part
partially.
you're glossing over. This isn't the story.
This is not the story.
This
this
is
is
the
completely
background?
separate.
This is the
I know,
background
'cause
information.
The Scott expedition
Wait,
is
I
a
need
whole other story, and it's
Go back.
really interesting
Wait, go
too.
back.
But
Okay, this is what I thought you were talking about today. So
no,
there's
we're
more
not
to
talking
it.
about this one. There's much more to it. So that was, those are the kind of the
Okay,
two,
wait. What were the two parties again? So who got there
Amundsen,
first and who was trying to get there?
Amundsen,
Okay.
the Norwegian, got there first, and Scott
Okay.
got to the South Pole only to find the Norwegian flag just like sitting there, basically.
Thought
And they
he
realized
was
they were too
first.
late.
Flag is
Yeah.
there.
Yep.
What
They
was
made
the
it to the
case of
South
that?
Pole, saw the flag, and then on the journey
Yeah, wait, Nick,
back
pause.
from the
Pause.
South Pole.
What year was this?
Both of these happened in 1911.
Okay.
Wow. Oh,
Yep.
wow. So
They-
close in time, too.
Right after each other. I think that they kind of
Mhm.
were like racing, basically. They both knew
Okay.
that they were there around the same time, but they didn't know who was going to get there first, who had the easier journey, etc.
Yeah. So
And it turned out
I knew about this race, and I thought that's what you're going to be talking about. But the race is
it's
background.
not what I'm talking about. Yeah, the race is just
Okay.
background info.
Okay.
Imagine this
So
is
this is all
like
going to be
this-
new to me.
the space race. And like
That's
we
what-
get there and there's like the Russian flag there or something like that.
Mhm.
That would be awesome.
The thing is,
That
the
would've been
only thing is,
crazy.
we would have fucking known. They would have let us know that they were on the moon.
Yeah, the thing
at that
with
point.
the thing
But
with
like, in 1911,
Mm-hmm.
the thing was it was 1911.
There's no,
You couldn't
like,
just like call them on the phone and be like, "Hey, we
live
did it. You guys
TV.
can turn around now." Yeah.
Yeah, fuck you
No,
guys
it's
were here.
1911.
I feel like
And
even then
they
they'd be
were
like,
only a
nah,
few-
nah, let them do it.
Yeah.
that'd be so
They
cool.
were only like a few days to weeks apart, I think. So like, they both got there around the same time. And nowadays, like the
Mhm.
research base at the South Pole is called the Amundsen Scotts. It's named after both of them. It's kind of nice. Unfortunately, Scott and the others who were with him, I
Would
think
you
they all
wait?
died.
Pause. Okay. Wait, Nick, I have another question. Sorry to keep
Yeah.
interrupting. So, as scientists, would you ever go research at the South Pole?
Oh, I would love to go to
If
Antarctica.
they
I don't know
asked
if
you
I
to.
would stay at the
You would do it?
South Pole, but I would totally go to Antarctica. I really want to go there at
Okay.
some point. I think it'd be awesome.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. I've thought
Mhm.
about it. You have to do like a really long stay, and you like can't get out once you're there.
Yeah. So,
All right, continue.
yeah. Yep. Upon making it to the South Pole, Scott leaves, dies on the way back. It's tragic, A couple of things went wrong. I think the biggest thing that went wrong is they were just dejected. Like they felt terrible because they got to the South Pole only to see that someone had beat them there, and it like sucked, and it just like
Bad
really
morale.
killed the morale, and a lot of them ended up dying.
They
So now we
needed
got to
team
rewind a
bonding
little bit.
activity.
All right, we got to rewind back to 1901, which is the first expedition of the Discovery, which is the boat that took Scott on his fatal and tragic expedition. Right. It was in 1901. It was also led by Robert Falcon Scott, and it was Shackleton's first expedition to the Antarctic. He turned out to be really popular among the crew and accompanied Shackleton. And he accompanied Scott and another man on their attempt, the Navigator, at their attempt at the South Pole. So Scott, Shackleton, and the Navigator all, they were on this big expedition. They landed. They were trekking inward, and they set a new farthest south was reached. Their sled dogs unfortunately died when their food went bad, and they had to be killed because they couldn't feed them. But they put a new record up, right? They had reached the furthest south that anyone had ever gone in human history, right? So it was, they didn't make it to the pole, but it was still a success, right? They pushed the record a little further.
Nick, we've done
They all
2
made
episodes, and in each one, they killed the pet because they ran out of food.
There is unfortunately going to be a fair amount of pet killing in this.
Okay, so trigger warning
Episode.
for
I'm
animal
sorry.
abuse. Okay.
Yeah, animal death for sure.
Okay.
They treated them. I don't think it was quite abuse, but yeah.
It wasn't abuse, it was necessity.
Yeah. We're going to get there. Shackleton fell ill on the way back to the ship after they had reached that further south, but they all made it out. He went back in 1903, and everything was cool, right? In 1907, Shackleton's like, all right, I want to do my own expedition. I want to get to the South Pole first. he buys this boat, names it the Nimrod, which is awesome, by the way. I believe that's a
How is that spelled?
god. N-I-M-R-O-D,
How's that spelled?
the same way you would Nimrod. Oh, it's a biblical character.
Are we gonna have to do an episode on
Nimrod.
the etymology? We're gonna have to do an episode on the etymology of Nimrod.
Yeah.
Was Nimrod a Nimrod?
He was the great grandson of Noah. Anyway, yeah, he was supposed to be
of
like
the
a mighty
Ark?
hunter, whatever. Yeah, of the Ark.
And also, didn't Noah not like his sons?
But this was like grandson, so I don't know. He only.
I don't know a lot of the Noah lore.
Yeah.
I think his son saw him.
I don't really know what the Nimrod lore is either.
Haven't we all?
I believe it didn't have quite the same connotation at that time. So he buys this boat, the Nimrod, right, in 1907.
Okay, he buys the Nimrod. He's on the Nimrod.
Yeah, he kind of throws this expedition together. It was funded with private loans, didn't get any institutional or governmental support. So he's like borrowing money from like wealthy British men to put this expedition together. The Nimrod was like small and old. He originally wanted a bigger boat, but then like someone else bought it before he could get it or something like that. Or he couldn't get the money for the bigger one, something along those lines. So it needed like an extensive refitting in order to prepare it for the Arctic.
It's always like that. You can never get the money for the bigger one.
No, you can never. Robert Falcon Scott gets all the money, gets the nice big boat, he gets the Discovery.
Size isn't everything, Nick. It's okay. I'm sure it was an adequately sized boat. I'm sure his Nimrod was adequately sized for the expedition.
I'm sure it was.
Nimble rod.
It ended up being fine. Honestly, I think he later remarked that it was like a really sturdy ship, and he really liked it. But yeah, it took a ton of effort to get it in shape. They go on this expedition, and he and his team push the furthest southerly latitude ever reached to 88 degrees 23 minutes south. That's 112 miles from the South Pole.
I'm glad you think I know what that means.
That's a new furthest south record. It's a whole big deal. The South Pole's at 90 degrees south. Unfortunately, they had really bad weather conditions and ended up running out of food, and it forced them to turn around. But overall, it was a relatively successful expedition. Nobody died. They pushed the record closer to the pole, and everyone went home. On this expedition, he really secures Frank Wild as his second in command. This guy, Frank Wild, become really good friends. He was also on the 1901 voyage of the Discovery with Falcon Scott. He was part of that. And they just became really good friends, and it really, he was his second in command on the Nimrod expedition. And we'll see going forward that relationship ends up really mattering a lot and, being important on future expeditions. So
Okay, wait, let me get the characters straight. Who's the captain, Nick?
Ernest Shackleton is the leader of this expedition. He's the guy who's putting this all together.
His second in command
idea.
Is who?
Is Frank Wild.
Okay. Wild is second in command.
Yes, Frank
Wild.
Who's
the captain?
Ernest Shackleton. This whole episode's going to be about him.
I should have been taking notes. Shackleton,
right,
Wild, okay.
He was on Scott's first expedition to the South Pole. He then puts together his own expedition on the Nimrod.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're about to find out is in 1914, following the having missed out on 1914? Yeah. Having missed out on the being the first to reach the South Pole, right? Because that happened in 1911 with Amundsen and Scott. Shackleton's like, all right, I'm not giving up. I still want my glory. I still want my fame. I still want to do something cool in Antarctica, right? I want to keep pushing this Antarctic expedition. So he decides he wants to be the first to cross Antarctica over land. So he wants to, if we go to the, if you look at your attached materials, the second picture.
Yeah, we're going to get a sizing.
I love how just men in this era were just had nothing better to do than be like, shit, what else can I be the first to do? I guess I could walk across all that land.
Yeah, you could just be an explorer. That was a valid career path back then. Which honestly I'm kind of jealous of. That'd be cool. I would like to explore.
Yeah, there's nothing there's no piece of land that I can be
would have been
shit,
horrendous,
no one's walked across that yet. I wouldn't have wanted to, but yeah.
Do you think that's
the only places you can really still do that are really remote, mountainous,
I think it is. I think Abby's right.
Really remote mountains. What's up?
Abby called it the masculine urge to cross land.
I agree. Yeah. The only places left to explore are for like some of the furthest north mountains in like Svalbard or like Greenland or
bottom of the ocean,
Canada. I mean, it's like, yeah, and all of them are miserable and hard to get to.
Northern Canada.
Parts of northern Canada are still like not very well, traveled.
I didn't know that. Okay, so he decides I wasn't the first one there, but I can be the first one across the whole
Antarctica overland. Yeah. So the idea is they'll have two teams.
We got visual aids.
Yeah, one is going to land kind of on the South American side of Antarctica. You can't use like east and west because you're at the pole and like it doesn't work like that, right? Because
everything is south
from the pole. Yeah, everything is north or south. East and west just goes in a circle around it, right? So we're kind of on the South American side of Antarctica. That's where one team is going to land. They're going to start trekking across the glacier or across Antarctica, up the glaciers, over the continent.
Abby has a question.
Sorry. Yes,
pay attention to your audience.
Did anyone ever give me access to the brand name drive?
You never got on it?
I said I requested access.
Oh, I never got your email. Okay, continue talking, Nick, and I'll work it out.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so one party's going to land on the South American side. The other party is going to land kind of on the Australian side in the Ross Sea. And what they're going to do is they're going to trek about a third of the way into the continent toward the South Pole, and then they're going to leave a trail of supply depots heading all the way back to the coast. So that way they don't have to carry as much stuff from the South American Weddell Sea side. That's where they land. It's a reasonable plan. It definitely seems possible. Like, people have already gone to the pole and back. It's not really that much more effort to go to the pole and then keep going, right? Except for the fact that you can't lay your own supply depots on the way back. So that's why that second team.
Yeah, like in my head, it's like if you can make it to the middle, which is the South Pole, and then make it back to the other side, that's 100%. Just you're doing 50 and then 50 the other way.
Mm-hmm. It is. The only thing is, right, you haven't been there to lay your own supply depots. That's the big thing, right?
Yeah, they're able to reuse the same tents.
Yeah, they were able to leave supplies on their way in and then pick them up as they came back out. So that's where
you're right. Though it doesn't sound impossible.
Right? No, it doesn't seem impossible.
Okay, so there's a ship on one side and then a ship on the other side.
Yes. So he calls this expedition the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition. Big name. He shops around for support. He finally gets some financial support from a couple men and a 10,000-pound grant from the British government, which back then was a lot of money. And so here's the plan. He's going to acquire 2 new ships for the mission, the Endurance and the Aurora. The Endurance, led by Shackleton, will travel to the Weddell Sea on the South American side of the continent, where 14 men would land, of whom 6 of them, under Shackleton, would be the Transcontinental Party. And they, with 69 dogs, 2 motor sledges, and a bunch of equipment, would undertake the 1,800-mile journey across Antarctica to the Ross Sea. It's 1,800 miles. It's a long fucking way.
Go
ahead.
The remaining 8 men would be the shore party, and they would carry out scientific work at a couple locations, including a base camp and some nearby islands. They're just going to be studying some stuff while they're there, and then eventually they'll get picked up.
Nick.
Nick.
Don't interrupt our guests like that.
No, but he has better information to say.
You can't hear us?
I can, but I think I need to turn it up.
Okay. Wait, I know what we're going to ask.
How did they transport so many dogs? Like,
see, I was hung up on the number of dogs.
I mean,
it's a lot of dogs. I know, 69 dogs. Yeah. They had just
you were emphasizing the miles, and I was like, forget that, 69 dogs.
They had kennels on board. I mean, it's a pretty big boat. I mean, if you go to the third image.
I wasn't even thinking about them on the boat.
Yeah, they're on the boat. 14 men, 69 dogs, all the equipment, they're all going to be on the boat together. He actually ended up hiring a guy who came just to handle the dogs on the way down to the South Georgia Island, which is kind of their stopping point or starting point of the mission. But we'll get to that in a minute. So that's the Endurance. The Aurora, on the other hand, would depart from Hobart, Australia, which is on the island of Tasmania, and would arrive on the other side of the Antarctic in the Ross Sea. And their mission, like I said earlier, would be setting up the supply depots and meeting Shackleton's crew about a third of the way across the continent. And there, they'd be able to restock and provide assistance to the travelers as they make their way across. And then eventually they'd get to the boat, pick everybody up, and redistribute and set sail for home. So in 1914, he starts getting this crew together. He gets thousands of applicants. He gets like 5,000 applicants for this for this mission. People were like crazy about going to the Antarctica back then, apparently. He narrows it down to 2 teams of 28, and eventually there's a stowaway that makes their way on board as well, which we'll get to. And appoints Frank Wilde.
Does stowaway have a name?
Yeah. He does. We'll get to him later.
Okay.
Actually, I'm not sure he has a name. We might have kicked him off the boat later. So, of course, Frank Wilde joins him again, right? He's the guy who had been with him on both the first Discovery expedition as well as the Nimrod expedition. So he'd been to the Antarctic twice. They were good friends. They knew each other well. Yeah. He hires Frank Worsley to captain the Endurance, and him, along with Tom Crean, who'd been on the Terra Nova expedition, which was Scott's expedition, which had made it to the South Pole, he would serve as the second officer. So this was like a seasoned crew, seasoned captain. They had extensive Antarctic experience, many of whom had worked with Shackleton before or had been on other expeditions down in Antarctica. So like this one is considerably less thrown together than the Nimrod expedition was, which is like good. You know, he's like, okay, been here before. I know what to expect. You know, we got a crew who's been here before. It's not going to be as bad. So the ship and the crew eventually, they make their way down to Buenos Aires in Argentina. And Shackleton joins them there. He was not able to leave with the crew from England. He got like held up on business or something. And in Buenos Aires, they pick up Shackleton and another crew member, and this is where the stowaway joins. I'm not sure they actually name the stowaway. I can check real quick.
Damn, the stowaway is the only part I even care about.
Kicked off the boat later. Yeah.
Stowaway on a boat expedition is now on my bucket list.
Mm-hmm. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? You know, you just like sneak aboard. I mean, it would suck if like something went wrong. But you know.
It's like crashing a wedding, but on a boat.
Yeah, it's like crashing a wedding, except you can't leave.
Yeah, except like they might throw you off the boat.
The stowaway's
it's like crashing a wedding, except they might make you walk the plank.
The stowaway's name is Blackborough. He actually ends up coming up later. Things do not go well for him.
That's a pirate name, Nick.
Yeah, Perce Blackborough. He probably ends up regretting this. We'll get there.
Oh. I'm getting the feeling that they all end up regretting this.
I don't know.
I was the one that was like, "That was sick, guys. Let's meet again."
That's something we're going to talk about at the end of this, because it definitely sucked, but it could have been much worse.
Okay.
So yeah, they make their way to they're in Buenos Aires. They leave from Buenos Aires. They go to South Georgia Island, which is a whaling outpost and a common stop on the way to Antarctica. It's this tiny little island. It's like covered in mountains and glaciers, and it's just got like a couple little towns on the like northern side of the coast where whalers live, and it's their home base. They got a port there, you know, or harbor there, etc. They leave from South Georgia on the 5th of December, 1914. They encounter heavier than usual pack ice just 2 days later, as far north as 57 degrees south. So this is pretty far north for like heavy pack ice to be. And this is kind of a sign that maybe things aren't going to be so great this year. It's like a colder winter than they normally would have experienced. It was like a colder winter than normal. There's a lot more sea ice than normal. And remember,
oh no,
December
it was cold.
in Antarctica. Yeah, but December in Antarctica
They went in
summer.
December?
December in Antarctica is summer because you're in the southern hemisphere, right?
How do they have seasons if they're at the bottom in the middle? Isn't it always winter?
No, the Earth is tilted. They get like 6 months of sun, and you know, or
and just to remind you, I almost failed physics, so
yeah, they get periods of time where the sun does not set and periods of the time where the sun does not
okay
rise.
Well, you learn something new. I knew the Earth was tilted. I guess I never considered it like this. Okay, you learn something new every day.
Honestly, it is summer. South America and Australia are this close on a map.
Yeah, they are quite close. They are quite close. The very
you said Buenos
tip.
Aires, and I was surprised by that too.
Well, they don't like leave directly from there. If you go back to that one map, you can kind of see that like southern tip of South America, the very southern tip of Argentina and Chile. It's not super far
I never
from
realized
that one peninsula that sticks off of Antarctica.
That's what I'm saying. I never realized how far south South America goes compared to Antarctica. And for our audio listeners, I will upload all of the images onto our Instagram. So follow us at This Pod Counts.
Oh, am I back? Okay.
Honestly, if I saw this map too, I'd be like, I can do this. I can make this travel.
Yeah, I'd be like, it's like right there. It's like just a skip over the pond.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But not looking at all at the scale and just like thinking about that.
Yeah.
Well, and like our sense of maps and like distance is already so skewed.
Well, this is a flat map. It doesn't consider you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you really got to look at like the globe on Google Earth. That's the best way to get a good sense of scale. Like Antarctica's not that big of a continent, all things considered. It's just really hard to get to. So they leave on December 5th, right? And just 2 days later, they encounter a ton of ice. And over the next few days, the ship has to repeatedly dodge pack ice, which slows their progress considerably. On December 22nd,
wait, Abby, what's that one movie with the pirates?
Pirates of the Caribbean.
The Caribbean?
No, they have. It's animated and they have swords.
One Piece.
No, it's like a DreamWorks movie.
Peter Pan.
And there's two guys.
Sinbad.
Yes. Don't they go and they have to like chisel out the ice with the boat?
Yeah, but there's also like this big old bird.
So I think that's where this is going.
I need to watch that.
I know, this is honestly the exact imagery I've had this whole time.
And that's what I'm picturing Sinbad.
Yeah. It's probably not bad imagery.
Sinbad is the stowaway. Actually, the stowaway would be the woman.
Yeah. It's always the woman.
Mm-hmm.
Because patriarchy.
There were no women on this expedition.
And I wonder why.
A woman would have been like...
Three did apply, but they...
A woman would have been like, selected. Y'all didn't plan enough. A woman would have been like, it's cold.
3 women did apply to join the expedition, but they were not selected. I'm assuming for somewhat...
And I wonder why.
Reasons. Yeah. Although probably, honestly, good
they would have been too. They would have been too emotional. They would have been too emotional.
A lot of shit.
Yeah, what if that was period?
They would have gotten faint.
Mm-hmm.
On the 22nd of December, huge cracks opened up in the ice, and that allowed them to continue pushing steadily southward. This continued for several weeks until early January, when they eventually sighted land near the end of a large glacier. After some discussion and deliberation, Shackleton chose not to land there. It was a little far from what they had hoped, or from where they had hoped to land. And, it wasn't ideal. So they kept on, trying to get over toward where they wanted to land. But unfortunately, bad weather moved in and more ice pushed the Endurance away from land. And then eventually it got so bad that they got stuck in the ice. So now...
Oh, yeah. This is where... I'm looking at the map, Nick. I'm looking at the map, Nick, and it shows that they get, where they get, close to land. Like, they're literally, about to touch it.
They're very close. But the thing you have to realize with Antarctica, right, is you have all these big glaciers that dump right into the sea. So, even if you're near the continent, sometimes it can be really hard to actually get on land. So, there's only so many landing locations. Yeah, it looks
like they were, almost touching it.
Yeah, they got very, very close. Ultimately decided against landing and got stuck in the pack ice. So this is where things start to go wrong. Do you know how long
they were, the beginning leg of, that boat trip was? How long they were on sea until they got to land?
Yeah, so they departed on December 5th, and they sighted land on, I want to say early January. Yeah, early January. So it was only...
Okay, so it took, a month.
Yeah. About a month, and then they see land, and they're like, okay. Yeah, because it's not, that far, and, everything is going to plan at this point, right? Mm-hmm. You got a fully working sailing ship. You just sail on down there. Mm-hmm. But now they're stuck in the ice. So by February 14th, so, it took a little while. They were still sailing around, and progress got slower and slower and slower because of all the ice. But by February 14th, 1915, and the Endurance was firmly stuck in the ice pack. Shackleton ordered the crew to try and break her free using picks, axes, whatever else they had just on the boat. They were literally in there, trying to chip this thing out of the ice, trying to open up enough space that they could, pick up some speed and start using the boat as an icebreaker again. Didn't really work. After 10 days of that, they came to the conclusion that they're just going to have to winter in the ice. This was not, completely unheard of. A similar thing had happened to a German expedition a few years prior, who safely made it out in the spring when the ice began to break up. So Shackleton was like, okay, well, we're probably going to have to abandon our primary objective, but it's fine. We'll just wait out the winter, and we'll head back home and try again another time. The dogs were moved to snow shelters.
So they like, we're not doing this anymore.
What's
so
that?
they turn around is the plan.
Well,
at least it's the
they
plan,
kind of just
to leave and come back.
Still trying. What happened was they were still trying to get to their preferred landing spot, and just the ice kept getting worse and worse, and they got stuck. So they were like, okay, well, we're not going to complete our objective this year. Let's just wait out the winter, and then we'll sail home in the spring.
Try again next year. Yeah. Okay. So that's the current plan now.
Wow,
Yes.
I didn't realize how soon we got into the trip, how quickly it's gonna go to shit.
Yeah. Yeah, it didn't take long. And mind you, this is
they haven't even touched land yet.
Summer. This is midsummer in Antarctica. Like, oh. Yeah, they've been on a boat for 2 months now, and like now they're stuck in the ice and they can't move, and they're like, all right, well, now what?
This is a man that has gotten to the land before.
Yeah, he has. This year just happened to be like particularly bad for sea ice, and there was, it's not they should predict that back then.
They should have consulted the Farmer's Almanac on this one.
Yeah, the Farmer's Almanac for Antarctica, where they do a lot of farming.
It's a particularly bad winter.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're just they didn't have
groundhogs
any kind of, like,
did not see his shadow.
Yeah, apparently not. This is being recorded on Groundhog's Day for all of our listeners. Just a little behind the scenes for you. Yeah, I mean, it's like, how do you predict the weather in Antarctica in 1914, 1915? You just can't. There's no infrastructure for it. There's no
meteorologists?
Yeah, there's no meteorology. It doesn't exist yet. So...
Yeah, I had this question earlier of like, have people even been, like, have people tried to get to the pool from all, well, general corners and sides of that area? Or, like, are they gonna, like you said, they're gonna travel past land that, like, doesn't have any of those, like, markers?
Well,
so they don't even know what that is like.
So the Weddell Sea and the Ross Sea are kind of the two main landing areas of all of the Antarctic expeditions as of yet, because they're the furthest south bits of water, right? It's the easiest to get to. It takes you the furthest south by sea before you have to do any of the excruciating overland trekking with sledges and sled dogs and whatever, right?
Okay, so yeah, because Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah. So they were going to an area that people had been to before, right? They wanted to land at a place that other Antarctic expeditions had been. It just, the weather that year, the ice.
So they had like some idea what they were getting into.
Yes.
Bad circumstances.
And again, experienced crew, Shackleton had been to the Antarctic at least twice by then. Same with his second in command. All of these.
They had
blind
people, male confidence.
Yeah, they did. They definitely did.
Well, and I'm sure he's like, it's okay. Like, I've done this before. If it's a little bit more challenging, I can overcome it. Like,
right.
But
well, and
this
at this point,
saying,
like, it's not that bad, right? They're just stuck. They've got plenty of food on board. They brought like multiple years or tons and tons of supplies because they're like, okay, we're going to be out there for a while.
Yeah, because I'm assuming there's like no way to gather food once you're out there. You
just have what you bring. There's seals and there's penguins, dogs. And that's about it.
That's what I was thinking too. Like, you have to feed every dog that you bring.
Yes,
you have to feed them, take care of like their poop.
And I'm getting a feeling that's going to come up.
Yeah. So
they start taking care of less and less.
The ship gets stuck on the 14th of they declare the ship stuck basically on the 24th of February. They move the dogs to the ice and they build them what they call dog loos, which I really like. They were just like ice shelters. I mean, these are like these are dogs that are accustomed to the winter, so they're fine out there. They're chilling.
Yeah, it's like they're probably doing better than the people are.
Yeah, exactly.
At this point, at least.
Yeah, I was about to say, about to turn to like a meat processing plants.
Right. The scientists aboard tried to build a makeshift radio, but there's nobody around. There's nobody to hear them, even if it did work. And so through February and March, they drifted slowly. All right. Morale stayed pretty high. The crew played football or soccer on the ice, gave each other haircuts, whatever. Shackleton was kind of like, he was really well liked by the crew, right? Everyone referred to him as the boss. Like, everyone just like in their journal entries and like they just called him the boss all the time. Like, he was the boss.
Missed opportunity to say Daddy Shack.
He wasn't Daddy Shack?
Just saying. Could have had better morale.
Shack.
But you're saying he's like well respected.
Yeah, super well respected, super well liked among the crew. He spends like these couple months keeping the crew and the dogs active just to make sure they're still fit, right? Because at this point, I think he still thinks that there's some possibility of resupplying and then trying again the following summer. So, they're just doing whatever they can. They put on plays, they celebrate holidays. They're just doing like whatever they can possibly do to just pass the time. Because at this point they think, okay, we're just gonna be stuck here over the winter. Once the winter's over, we can sail out and it'll be fine. But eventually things start going from bad to worse. So throughout the winter, endurance keeps getting squeezed by the ice, right? So, I mean, it is like frozen into this ice sheet. And the ice sheets are not like as solid and rigid as we might like to think they are, right? Like it's getting blown by the wind and it's getting pushed up against other ice sheets. And so there's all of these like compressive and tensile forces that are going on within the ice sheet. Giant stress ridges are forming where the ice like buckles and like forms these, ridges. Ice starts piling up against the sides of the Endurance in August. So August of 1915 we're at now. A strong gale forces masses of ice beneath her, causing it to list like 30 degrees.
She does.
Yeah. On the 24th of October, a huge chunk of ice gets forced against the starboard side of the ship, bending the hull, causing some of the timbers to break and splinter, and starts flooding the inside of the ship. So at this point, they're like, okay, we need to get everything and everybody off the ship because we don't know how long it's going to last. We don't know if it's just going to get crushed in the ice. We don't know what's going to happen, right? So they can start unloading all of her supplies.
Took 2 months to get to this point.
Yeah. 2 months to get there, and now they've been trapped in the ice since February, and it's now August. So they've been in this ice for like 6 months now. They spend on the ice, just in the ship, just playing games, putting on musicals.
They never even got to land.
No, they never even set foot on land. I know.
Oh.
So now it's been 8 months since they originally left. Over 8 months since they left. Actually, we're in October
This
now.
captain went from one failure of being second place into this failure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, good for him.
Was driving him.
So
he was
now,
like, no, we're doing this because some dude's going to plant a flag. But
but he wants to be the
first.
Other
side, there's another flag.
Yeah, he wants to be the first to cross Antarctica for some reason. I'm not even sure anyone's accomplished that to date. Because I don't know why you would. I mean, it's like I'm not sure there's a whole lot of
we could still be the first to do it.
That's true. Should we put together an expedition?
Oh my.
We just said it was bucket list. As long as you put it together and I can stow away.
Mm-hmm. Oh, someone did it in 1997.
So how long was the trip supposed to take, like, in total again?
I want to say they had planned to get everything done in about a year. I think they wanted to do the whole crossing during that summer, right? Months. So it would have been, they would have crossed in the summer, ideally. So it would have been over, like, months ago at this point, right?
Okay.
So was winter come?
What's that?
Winter's coming.
Winter, yeah. I mean, peak winter is July there, right? So they got trapped in February because remember, it's a really short, really cold summer still. I mean, it's summer, but it's not like it ever gets cold or it ever gets warm down there. So February, March, they're drifting. By August,
yeah, they all had their sunscreen on.
Yeah. They probably did have sunscreen on because it gets real bright.
I was gonna say, actually, the reflection off the snow is probably really bad.
Yeah.
Albedo, I fucking hate you.
I know. I always want to say libido every single time I see it or hear it. I just that's what my
I took one environmental class and that shit pissed me off so much.
Mm-hmm.
It made me so mad.
We joke about that word a lot.
I hated every second of it. I just like in biology, everything's really, really small. You're talking like micro, and that's fun. And then I took an astro class, and everything's really, really big, and I thought that was fun. And then I did environmental, and everything's like this midpoint, like Earth related, and I was like, I fucking hate this shit.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there's someone like you that enjoys it.
Wait, so what month would it be now in this timeline?
So right now it's August, right? October. in October.
Okay, so they passed the winter.
Yeah, they're in winter. They're kind of it's like end of winter. They're making their way into spring, right? But I mean, it's Antarctic spring, so it's not cold. It's not pleasant.
Yeah, their issue is they're just stuck. The issue is they're not moving.
They're just stuck. They can't go anywhere, right? The boat is literally like frozen into a giant block of ice. So
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at this photo that you put up. Like, it's just surrounded by ice. It's just
like there's nowhere to go.
They're not going anywhere.
Right. So the plan was to wait it out, but now all of a sudden in October, you've got this huge chunk of ice that was forced against the side of it, and the pressure builds up and it breaks the hull, and you've got water coming in. So the crew began unloading all of their supplies and all of their equipment onto the sea ice. They lowered all 3 of the lifeboats off of the Endurance, and Shackleton gave the ultimate order to abandon ship 3 days later. Over the next, they kind of set up camp.
Ship.
I know. They set up camp on the ice.
Was the water waist high, Nick?
Maybe in the
water waist
lower
high?
holes. I have no idea.
Because then they should have stayed with their ship for 72 hours.
I don't think that counts when you're
in case a rescue team came.
I think when your boat is actively being crushed by icebergs, you might change the rules on that one.
There wasn't a rescue team coming in 72 hours?
Believe it or not, nobody knew where they were. Nobody knew what was happening. You couldn't just call someone on your satellite phone.
Well, yeah, and at this point, they're not even expecting them to be returning yet. Because they're thinking it's going to take a year to cross.
Yeah.
They're not even missing.
We're in Australia, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah, that other crew, we'll kind of talk about them at the end, because they don't really come into play a whole lot with this. They do manage to set up all of the supply depots, and then they kind of just are like, okay, well, we haven't heard from them, we haven't seen them. At this point, we kind of just assume they're dead, and they went back to Australia, and they had some, they had their own issues. I think somebody died of like a heart attack or something, or frostbite, or scurvy, or something along those lines. Yeah, and so
or scurvy, same difference.
I don't know. I think it was scurvy actually. Yeah, so they end up having to leave.
They didn't bring enough
back
oranges
to Australia. Yeah, apparently not.
Okay, so so both ships that they had available of getting back, gone.
Yeah, and one of them really wasn't available to this crew, right? Like one of them was across the continent of Antarctica. So that's not really an option right now. They've kind of ruled that one out. So they have the lifeboats.
They have no ship.
And they have no ship. They have 3 lifeboats, and they have all the supplies and equipment and whatever they could pull off the ship.
Women and children first.
Few dinghies.
And then over the next few weeks, the crew continues to salvage what they could from the wrecked vessel, including all of the photographs and cameras which were originally left behind. This is really nice because it means we get all of the really cool photos out of this. There's some really well-preserved film photography from that era, or from this expedition.
I'm looking at the photos, and it's really impressive, how nice these photos are.
Yeah.
I'm going to go off on a little tangent here about film. Early digital had this issue where
Nick.
It was really low resolution, and everything from the early 2000s kind of looks like shit because it was recorded at 480p.
And I love it.
That's just what the technological limits were at the time, right? But what's cool about film is as long as you still have the negatives and they're well maintained and all that, you can rescan them, and they're super detailed. I mean, film was
you have the photo restoration process now.
And it's
for
just
all that.
Because it's such a physical medium, it's much higher resolution and quality than any of the early digital stuff was, and in some cases even better than some of the current high end digital is. Really
the only reason
stuff.
I know these photos are the only reason I know these photos are from the 1900s is just the clothing and stuff that they're wearing.
Yeah, the clothing, the ships,
looks very high resolution.
Right. Yeah.
Oh wow.
So. Yeah.
Wait, so the Atlantis, the cartoon movie?
Obviously.
Yes.
Milo.
Yes. Oh yeah. The photo after the crushed ship looks like I don't know, it reminds me of the guy that served them super awful food.
Oh, is that the Mole guy?
No, Mole was the one that just ate it up.
I fucking hated Mole.
I don't know.
If they cut him from the movie, it would be a 10 out of 10 movie.
But everybody hated on Mole, But no, the guy who goes 3 food groups, and I can't remember what the first two are, but the last one's lard.
Yeah, I want to call him Chef, but I know I'm thinking of Total Drama Island.
Yeah, if I was like, you're right. But no.
It's because there's a similar looking and sounding character in Total Drama Island called Chef.
Well, yeah, but that's not the one. I don't know. He was just an old geezer with a little bit of a belly, you know? Anyway, sorry, tangent, but that's what's...
And that's what this is about, is tangents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it looks like they're in the scene right before the fireflies come out and like burn everything.
No, I agree. They're chilling for sure.
For your audio listeners, just imagine that scene. If you haven't, go watch it.
They'll all be on the Instagram. So if you're curious what we're talking about, give us a follow.
Let them know if you agree. But also another point: did they since they only have 3 boats? Did they leave a ton of dogs behind, or did they try to like?
No, so they're still on ice, right? So they didn't leave anyone behind yet. So we'll kind of get.
Oh, they're not drowning.
No, they're not drowning, right? Like they get off the ship, but they're just on solid ice, right? Like the ship is getting crushed, and so they can't really stay on it. But there's no like imminent danger to the crew. So with the loss of the endurance, with.
I said besides being stranded, there's no imminent danger.
Right. Yeah. The whole being stuck in Antarctica thing.
Yeah.
So at this point they're like, okay, well we're absolutely not crossing Antarctica now, right? We no longer have a ship. We got to focus on survival now. So Shackleton knows of multiple supply depots that had been left as part of just multiple previous expeditions on various islands in the areas. There's been other rescue missions that have happened where things have been left in certain places. So he knows that there's all of this stuff nearby that they could potentially get to and that could potentially help keep them alive, keep them fed, keep them, going for another couple months. Maybe there's wood. They can, refit one of the lifeboats and be able to go somewhere, whatever, right? Like, they know at this point, okay, we got to get some materials. We got to just get to some stuff and like figure some shit out. So his idea is to march across the ice to reach one of these resupply areas. They set out on the 30th of October, 1915, carrying two of the lifeboats on sledges. Problems quickly arise because the sea ice was not flat, right? You have all of this like pressure ridges and buckling and big chunks of like ice get pushed up and pulled under, and none of it is flat. None of it is smooth. It's like horrible to get across. It's just like super jagged, and like their progress like slowed to under a mile a day. One of the crew members described the ice as a labyrinth, and by the 1st of November, literally like 2 days later, he gave the order to abandon the march. They didn't make it very far. They were like, okay, at this point, we just have to wait out the winter and wait for the ice to break up and, just sit tight, basically. So they find a solid, smooth-looking piece of ice, and they set up camp. And over the next few weeks, crews make occasional trips back to the Endurance. They continue salvaging supplies and materials until the 21st of November, when she eventually slips beneath the ice. So at this point, like, the Endurance is gone. It's November. They started this expedition the previous December, and now your boat is completely gone. There's no hope of getting it back. All you have left is what you have, right? The ice pack that they're on, it drifts, but slowly. They're just basically sitting tight. They're doing the same stuff. They're playing games. They're keeping the dogs active. They're running around. They're just doing whatever they can to pass the time, except now they are literally living on the ice. A few months later, rations start to dwindle, and seal meat really becomes a staple part of their diet. I believe seals will come up through the ice to breathe in certain areas. I don't know specifically where they were hunting them, where they were getting the seal meat, but they were eating seals, right?
Wait, you said they're eating seal?
In January, yeah, seal. Seal goes from like spicing up their diet to being like a staple of their diet.
I was gonna say, we have had back-to-back episodes of just like crazy hunters.
Yeah. And I think, these guys had probably all hunted seals before.
Seagulls, turtles,
in the Southern Ocean.
Yeah, no, they probably have.
I think sealing.
But seals are kind of bad bitches.
Yeah.
They should not be bitches.
But seal hunting was a lot more common back in the day as well. So I don't think it was like totally out of the ordinary. And it was like Antarctic. I think that's just what you did there. That's one of the main food sources down there.
I mean, they have very limited options.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, and after a couple months out here on the ice, they're starting to run out of rations. So they're like, okay, we really want to save these as much as possible in case we do need like preserved food. And they're like eating seal for like most of their diet. In January of 1916,
luckily they got plenty of ice to keep the meat cold.
Yeah, right. Nothing's gonna spoil.
Yeah,
but unfortunately, in January of 1916, Shackleton gives the order to shoot the dogs. At this point, there's 69 of them. They are consuming more meat than the men did, and they are.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's the biggest issue is just that you have to use supplies to keep the dogs alive.
Mm-hmm.
Is more of an issue than just like running out of food.
Yeah. They had a fair amount of them. As soon as you
said 69, I was like, how do you maintain that?
Yeah, a fair amount of them had died earlier in the year. But there were also puppies. Like there were like a couple litters of puppies that were born mid-expedition. They had to shoot the cat as well.
There's just a bunch of men birthing dogs.
Yeah, literally. And there's all these pictures of them. They're like playing with the dogs. They're like, they're like one of them's like holding like a litter of like 4 puppies, and he looks so happy.
That was probably a really hard decision.
Yeah, like the puppies being born was a big morale boost when they were just stuck out there in the ship for months. Like it was these guys like they were part
I
of
do
the
feel for
crew
them a little bit.
Point. Yeah.
I feel for them that was probably a hard decision, but you do kind of have to eat the dogs before you start eating people.
I think so.
Just ethically speaking.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the crew members, though, notes in his journal something like, I have met many men in my life that I would rather have seen shot than the dogs, or something like that. Like they'd really become.
So true. And there was that person on the team that was like, "What if we just shoot Roger instead?"
Right. Someone was definitely like the brunt of a joke and was like not happy about it because they were like, "What if we shoot this guy instead?"
Yeah.
Like the one guy
like
that nobody.
More meat than these dogs.
Right.
Yeah, they're like the dogs aren't even that big. Look at that guy.
Well,
but then you also have the fur dogs, from the dogs.
They're like I don't.
And if you skin them, you have pelts.
Mm-hmm. That guy's a real one, honestly.
Nice
like
warm,
the dogs are just happy to be there. They didn't ask to be on this trip.
And I would have felt the same way. I've been like, I know it's the decision that needs to be made, but it's not the decision I would make.
Yeah. And they had shot the cat earlier in the year. The one ship cat.
There was a cat with them.
There was a cat. Most ships had a cat on board because they would help with the mice and help
for
with
mice.
Rats. Sorry,
Cat W
rat control basically. I think it was the cook's cat. I think the cook.
I'm a big mouse fan, anti-rat fan.
Wait, what about the cat?
Yeah,
Nick?
Rats suck.
I hate rats. You said something about the cat? No, the rats.
I think. Oh, I just said rats suck in general.
Yeah, I hate rats. Mice are fun. Yeah. I like mice.
So
Kayla plays with mice.
That gets us to March 17th. So they've now spent like 2 months without the dogs. They're still running low on food. They've just been eating seals for like multiple months now, and the ship's still.
Oh no, the ship is broken. What is their goal here? Okay, what is their plan then? Okay, yeah, ship sunk. What is their plan? They're just gonna survive out there as long as they can.
They've got 3 lifeboats, and they're waiting for the ice to break up. And when the ice breaks up, they're going to try to get to land and just like, try to get to one of these supply depots.
This feels like a bad plan.
What else are you going to do? I mean, they tried marching
to the other
across
boat.
the ice, but they tried. Because you got to cross Antarctica to get there.
Okay, but if the alternative is just sit here and wait to die,
well, but
I guess let's give it a go.
The thing was, they tried to walk, right?
They had every intention of crossing all of the water when they got to land. The ice is probably connected to land. Walk across the ice, walk across Antarctica, hope you get to the other boat. What the alternative is just sit there and die?
That's the thing, though. They tried. No, Kayla, they tried crossing the ice. What happened was all of the pressure ridges and all of the just fracturing and everything made the ice so hard to cross. They were traveling less than a mile a day on average.
Okay,
Like they were making no progress.
Direction forward.
This is a bad situation.
They knew of some supply depots from other missions, and they were going to try to get to some of those, but they were like 150 miles away at the closest, right? And it was 150 miles of like broken, shattered, just completely impassable ice. Because they can't go without the supplies, right? Like they need all those supplies to keep themselves alive while they get there, but then they can't bring the supplies because the terrain is so bad. So that's why they had decided, okay, we are just going to wait this out. When the spring comes and the ice starts breaking up, that's when we're going to start making our way, try to get to an island.
They should have sent Roger to the checkpoint to go get supplies.
That's what I'm saying. And if he dies, one last mouth to feed.
All the Roger died. It's not you. It's just that.
It's Roger.
Yeah. So March 17th, the crew and they spot Paulette Island, a barren little rocky outpost off the Antarctic Peninsula. But it was 60 miles away and they could not reach it. I mean, Shackleton wrote something like, it was only 60 miles away, but it may have been 600 for all intents and purposes, right? Like, it was so hard to cross this terrain that there was no way they were ever going to get there.
I'm picturing the next couple months, slipping like that one video of the guy that like falls for like 45 seconds straight, like every time they try to go somewhere.
Yeah, on like jagged ice and stuff too, probably like almost impaling yourself.
Yeah, I'll post that video too if anyone wants to see what I'm talking about. And I'll post the Atlantis picture and the Sinbad.
Good reference photos. I also wonder like how many times, like I bet there was one guy that fell a little bit too much. It was Roger. At a certain point, just
we're like, fucking Roger is the one slowing us down. We could cross the ice if he stopped slipping.
Too. All the there's like 20 dudes.
Causes like a domino.
Yeah.
They're all carrying the lifeboat together, and like one person, Roger, falls and everyone else goes down with it. Yeah.
Oh.
So yeah, they set up this like semi-permanent camp. And over the next couple months after March 17th, when they first sighted land, they remained in sight of various islands, different pieces of land, but they couldn't get to any of them for months. Like, they could see land, but there was no way to like feasibly get there.
That's so frustrating.
Yeah. On the evening of April 8th, 1916, the ice below the camp starts to suddenly break up. The crew hurriedly like readies the lifeboats and gets everything in the water, gets everything in the boats, tears down camp. And over the next week or so, they just struggle through the ice. Like, they're frequently are getting like drenched by waves. They're like, their rations are diminishing. They're not hunting seals anymore because they're stuck in these boats. But now they can see land, right? The ice is breaking up a little bit. It's springtime. Things are like starting to get a little better, right? Actually, it's kind of past spring, but I think the ice breakup happens later because there's like a lag. I don't know.
So seeing land as in seeing like tip of South America or like the islands that they'd started from.
It's the Antarctic Peninsula. It's where they're at now at this point.
Okay, so they're closer to Antarctica still.
Yes, they're much closer to Antarctica still. Eventually, right? On April 15th, they made it to land on the east coast of Elephant Island. This is like completely uninhabited. It's this remote, rarely visited island, like right off the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. Nobody ever goes there, right? They're like, okay, we're on land for the first time in over a year. It's like almost a year and a half it's been since they've been on land, right? Ever since they left from South Georgia Island in December of 1914. So they finally like set foot on land. There's nothing there. And so they're like, okay, we have to get to civilization. We have to like contact someone if we ever want to get out of here. Right? So what they decide to do is they're going to adapt one of the lifeboats for an 800-mile voyage across the Southern Ocean. Their target is South Georgia Island, which is where they started from. And they're going to try to get help from a whaling vessel, try to make their way back there and pick up the rest of the crew. So Shackleton picks a crew of 6, including himself, to set out on this voyage. They literally, like, they put together a makeshift mast and all the different tools and ropes and everything that you need for sailing the lifeboat. They beef it up a little. They stock up on 4 weeks of supplies. Basically, they're like, if it takes any longer, we're going to be dead anyway. If we're not at South Georgia Island within 4 weeks, it won't have mattered. So that's all they bring. He leaves his second in command, James Wild, best buddy, in charge on Elephant Island, with instructions to make for Deception Island the following spring if they don't return. At this point, you might be thinking the crew is like ready to give up, but honestly, they still have like a lot of trust and a lot of like faith in Shackleton. Like, he's still the boss to them. They still think that he's going to get them out of this. And
and what really is giving up at this point? That's just sitting there and dying. So it's like, might as well go along with it.
Yeah. So
it's not like you can give up and be like, I'm done with this, man. I'm just gonna go home.
Yeah.
Well, if Shackleton's like, I got this, guys.
The crew is in terrible shape at this point, right? Like, they've been at sea for the last week in these little lifeboats, getting drenched in like freezing cold water. Like, they are miserable. Like, one of them, while they were alone on the island, one of them has a suspected heart attack. One of them's feet are so frostbitten that they eventually have to amputate them because they turn gangrenous. And a third of them is like,
who amputates them?
Like, was there gangrene? Was there frostbite? Like, how many appendages were lost?
Only 2 feet. And you know who the 2 feet belong to? The stowaway. The stowaway, who never should have been on this expedition to begin with, lost both his feet to frostbite. Yeah.
Wow, that kind of seems like retribution.
Blackborough.
Yeah. I mean, that was his price for the ticket on board.
Yeah.
I want to know the story of who amputated. How did that go?
They had prosthetics after.
Honestly, I bet they're like, yeah, we're taking your feet. We had to feed you.
They weren't even frostbitten. They were just like fucking with him.
Yeah. This is
no, they were turning gangrenous. It was like bad. They had 2 surgeons
he would have died,
on board.
So
as part of the crew, there were 2 surgeons. I think you just
so they planned ahead a little bit.
Yeah, they knew this was not his first Antarctic expedition, right? You bring surgeons along, you bring doctors. Yeah, his first rodeo. These are the things.
Dude, I bet he was like, I'm so prepared, guys. I'm prepared more than I ever have been before.
No, he definitely left so confident.
Genuinely, this was his most prepared expedition that he led. Like he this was his.
Isn't that just life?
To do it, and it just
he's losing his shit at night. Like in front of everyone, he's like, "Guys, we got this." I know. When he goes,
and that's the thing, right? Like, he writes.
His diary is a mess.
He has his diary. Like, you can read his diary.
Good.
He is like, dude, I'm keeping it up for the crew, but I don't know about this. I'm starting to get real worried.
You have to look confident for like morale, because when you lose morale, that's when it's really over.
Yeah. And that's what he was really good at. He was really good at like keeping the crew happy, keeping them like giving them a routine every day, making sure they had something to do to just keep their mind off of like how dire the situation really was, and like keeping up that air of confidence to just keep everyone happy and like keep them from succumbing to desperation, basically, and despair.
So many callbacks to last week's episode, honestly.
There really are. I know, it's kind of a similar. We'll get to this at the end. I want to have some discussion about.
Were they keeping a routine, Nick? Were they planning ahead?
I think they were. I think they were. Yeah, it sure does sound like it. I know they were on.
Were they cursing God?
They probably
Were they having the best sex of their life?
You know what?
We don't know about that. I imagine there was some hanky-panky going on, but I don't know if it's, how well known it is.
Dick would freeze if you took your pants off. Well, but they had
shelter and stuff. Right. They were like,
holes are warm.
So
hand jobs.
So here's what they do, right? So they turn one of the lifeboats into their makeshift sailing vessel. So one of the lifeboats becomes their sailing vessel. The other 2 get turned into shelters. I think they build up some like rock walls under them, and they serve as like the roofs. And then they've got this canvas that was from the sails that they used to build some like outdoor storage areas and stuff.
I hope there's fanfic on this.
Someone, like, Daddy Shack's writing like, I don't know if I can keep it up, guys. And so the guy is like, so Roger snuck into my tent last night.
I know everyone doesn't like Roger, but I think he has a thing for me.
He's a broken soul with no feet.
I can fix him.
His phenomenal head.
Foot jobs are off the table.
Oh man.
No baby.
Yeah, not from the guy with gangrene.
Oh.
So,
do you think they ate his gangrenous feet afterward? No, that'd kill them.
That's disease.
I think that's like awful for you. Yeah, I'm almost positive you can't.
It's like eating the bird filled with snake poison.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but knowing the bird was filled with snake poison.
Mm-hmm. April 24th, 1916. They've got the lifeboat together. It's 22 and a half feet long, by the way. Not a big boat. And there's 6 people in it, and it's a lifeboat.
In my head, I was like, oh, big boat.
No, 22 feet is a small
That was
boat,
the length.
Especially
I mean, that was the length of Jose's fishing boat.
Mm-hmm.
And he spent 13 months on that bitch.
Jose was in the Pacific. This is the Southern Ocean. This is the roughest, like, worst weather, freezing cold.
True, there was no ice.
It's a lifeboat. It's not even intended to be out in these conditions, really. They had to, like, build a mast and, like, string together some sails and stuff. Like, it's really not intended for any of this.
We love an
April
innovator.
24th, 1916, they launch. Their success depends, like, entirely on the accuracy of the navigator using observations that would have been made in, like, the worst possible conditions, right? It's, like, stormy all the time. You're like, you can barely see the stars. You can barely see the sun. Like, it's terrible,
yeah, no
right?
pressure.
The seas are rough. Yeah, and all you've got is, like, a compass and a chronometer and your maps. No pressure, right? It'll be easy. The boat almost gets destroyed on the 5th of May by what Shackleton describes as the largest waves he had ever seen in his many years at sea. And he had been at sea a lot. Like 20 plus years he'd been out sailing in various capacities. He was in the Royal Navy. I think he was like, he'd been all over the place. After 2
and they like
weeks
come
at
like
sea,
slow but fast at the same time. It would just be I can imagine the imagery.
You were on a tiny boat in waves that are probably taller than your mast, and you were just getting tossed around, drenched, like freezing cold water. I mean, they're probably wearing like a lot of sealskin and fur and stuff, and I'm sure they were warm, but they would have been wet for like weeks. 2 weeks at sea, they spot
and it hurts getting hit by a big wave.
Yeah, and the boat almost got destroyed.
Cold water.
The boat almost got destroyed by these things. Like, I mean, it's a miracle that they made it through. I mean, it's like a whole series of miracles is this entire expedition. 2 days later...
That's one way to look at it. They could have just made it. Well, that would have been a miracle.
That is true, I suppose. Yeah.
You imagine the guy would finally get to land. They're like, that was a miracle, guys. To be like, shut the fuck up.
It's all about perspective.
It really is. So 2 weeks at sea, they spot South Georgia Island. They're like, oh my God, we actually found it. Which some people are like still aren't really sure how they found it because they're not even sure the navigator was like had all his wits about him.
He lied on his resume.
Nice way of saying it. He may have been kind of losing it at this point, but they managed to make it to the island.
They probably all were.
Spot it. It took another 2 days after they spotted the island to actually get to land. A huge gale rolled in and like tried to blow them away. So for 2 days they like struggled. And fought against the currents and waves and everything, and they finally landed on the southern end of the island. Great, okay. They made it to land. It's a civilized, it's an inhabited island. They can get someone to help, right? Unfortunately, they landed on the southern coast. All of the, like, the villages and encampments and settlements are on the northern coast of this island. This is South Georgia Island we're talking about. This is not like, you know, some pristine tropical paradise. It is literally covered in mountains and glaciers. At this point, nobody has explored the interior of the island. They have only explored, like, the coasts and the settlements on the northern edge of the island. Like, they have to now, with a boat that no longer works, like, the rudder, like, fell off, like, right as they were getting to land. Like, this thing is, like, destroyed at this point. They're like, okay, we can't just, like, sail around the coast. We have to now cross South Georgia Island. Like, they literally are like, they get to land and they're like, oh, great, it's over. It's not over. They've still got so much left. So they spend a few days on shore, just like
try to travel the coast.
Well,
or even the coast, like still pretty like difficult.
I think the coasts are still pretty harsh as well because you've got a lot of glaciers that come off right into the sea, and like crossing glaciers is never easy, even in the best of conditions. So they decide, they spend a couple days on shore. They're just resting and recovering and basically deciding on what their next move is going to be. Do we try to go around the coast? Do we try to like fix the boat? Do we just try to like cross the island? because it's kind of like a long, narrow island, right? So it'd be really hard to go around, but it's not that much distance to just go over the middle. You just have to cross mountains and glaciers.
Yeah.
So, yeah, right. So the lifeboat's out of the question. And basically, Shackleton, the navigator, and one other guy are like, okay, we're in the best shape right now. You three stay here. You just recover, keep eating, just wait for us. We'll be back soon. They decide that they're going to cross South Georgia Island, cross the glaciers, cross the mountains, literally like this. The interior of the island has never been explored at this point. So they climb 3,000 feet up a nearby mountain peak and like spot the nearest
So they
settlement.
still got it first.
Yeah, they did.
Place a flag down.
They plant a flag. They bring flags with them.
I don't think they brought a flag at this point. I think they left all the flags behind at this. Yeah. So they spot.
Always be thinking ahead.
I just take
a
shit.
They climb this mountain and they're like,
okay,
mark it.
Mark the territory.
They climb this mountain and they can see that one of the settlements, and they're like, okay, we know where we need to go now. We know where we're at, because they didn't have maps of the island, right? They got there and they're like, okay, we need to figure out where the hell we are so we can like figure out where anyone else is. And over the next 36 hours, the party of three treks across mountains, at glaciers. At one point, they like tie themselves together and slide down the side of a mountain because they're like, okay, we need to get off this ridge before nightfall because the wind and the dark and the cold are going to be so bad that we just like have to get down. So they take this like super risky slide down this like snowy mountain slope, and it works. Like they're like battered and bruised, but everyone's okay. They travel through the night, navigating by moonlight, and by the next morning they sighted the town.
Slide down the mountain, you're saying?
Yeah, they like literally the three of them tie themselves together with a rope like around their chest, and they just like slide down together. It's insane. I don't know why.
That is Sinbad. It's Sinbad, and it's kind of romantic.
I think it's also like a glacier safety thing, because what can happen is there's these big crevasses that can open sometimes, and if someone falls in, the other two can like
crevasses,
stop and, like pull the other guy out. All three of them would later describe... I hate when I need two
guys to pull me out of a crevasse.
What were you saying, Nick? Nick is like, I'm just trying to tell my story.
Would later describe a fourth presence that they felt like marching along with them, guiding them. Shackleton wrote,
"It's a story."
Well, maybe, I don't know. Shackleton describes it as such. I have no doubt that Providence guided us. I know that during that long and racking march of 36 hours over the unnamed mountains and glaciers, it seemed to me often that we were 4, not 3. So all 4 of them described feeling some kind of like presence with them, some kind of like spirit or something. And it actually
that makes sense. They were delusional.
Yeah, probably, but it's happened enough to other people that it's been given a name. It's called the third man factor. It's probably a coping
Why?
factor.
There's 4 of them.
Well, it was named based on a poem that was inspired by this journey. I forget who the poet was, but it was famous.
Okay, so it kind of goes back to our last week, like trying to find control in uncontrollable circumstances.
Yeah. Yes.
In like maybe some way, like it's a guardian angel or it's something along those lines.
Yeah, exactly. It's inspired by the name comes from a T.S. Eliot poem. But apparently this is something that like lots of climbers and just like people who get lost alone or like in really hostile conditions like experience, like this feeling of like there's another person with you, or like some kind of like spirit or a guardian angel or something is like guiding you forward. It might be a coping mechanism. It might be delusion. Who knows, right?
I feel like for
also like
I was gonna say for me that would make me more scared of my situation than like comforted, because it would be like, oh, I'm lost and someone's stalking me.
Well, but I think they're always like they're often encouraging,
Yeah, it's like a peaceful, like spirit type thing when people are like, I felt their presence, but it calmed me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
okay, so I have poor, like I have a bad idea of like when this occurs or where this occurs, but like would the aurora borealis, would that be visible?
the
Yeah, I don't know when that
auroras
is
might
visible,
be
honestly.
visible in the winter there. It would technically be the aurora australis because borealis is north and australis is south. Fun fact.
Okay.
I know that.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think that could also be like another. I mean, they obviously maybe not.
I mean, the first people that saw that were probably like, holy fucking
They
balls.
probably saw it quite a bit during the winter down there, when they were stuck and it was night the entire year. I'm sure they got a ton of great aurora
At least
shows.
they had something to look at.
Yeah,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, at least they had something to look at.
Spiritual feeling events that maybe like could have been surrounding them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's a ghost with them.
Yes, so there's a ghost with them. So for 30, they spend 36 continuous hours. They do not like stop and like spend a night. They march through the night, and it takes them 36 hours.
No
and
time.
they finally reach
Grind.
the port town on the northern end of South Georgia Island on the 20th of May, 1916. A year and a half after leaving from the exact same harbor. Literally, it took them a year and a half, and they made it back there, the same place. Nobody there recognized
year and a half,
them.
and what did they accomplish?
They'd survived.
They ate a dog.
Yeah, they ate a
Dude,
dog.
I bet like
they ate dogs, they ate penguins, they ate seals. They were on an exotic meat tasting expedition.
They had a boys' trip.
A boys' trip.
Boys' trip gone
also
wrong.
Imagine like being the people that
gone
like
sexual?
saw them leave a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
Who's to say? We have to read the fanfic.
I'll write it, guys.
Yeah,
I'll let.
Can we get some?
I'll post it on Instagram when I'm finished.
Can we get some Ernest Shackleton ex-reader, please? Can one of our fans?
If we have any writer listeners, we would love if you wrote that up for us.
And you guys gotta find by the next time you record if there is any.
If someone writes
we'll
up the Shackleton fanfic, we'll do a dramatic reading, me and Nick.
Oh, and it'll be good.
But yeah, like imagine the people that saw them off from that port, and then a year and a half them coming back. You probably wouldn't recognize them, honestly.
I'd also be like, I thought you were sailing to the other side afterwards.
Well, I think they would have stopped back in South Georgia eventually, but yeah.
They were going to loop around.
Yeah. They were not expected to be back so soon. I'm not even sure if they were expected to be back. You know, some people may have been like, oh, these guys are going to die for sure. Yeah. They come back.
That's what I'm saying. Like, no one was going to go out looking for them.
Mm-hmm. They've got beards now.
I love it.
They're like shaggy and disheveled and bruised, and all of their clothes are like torn to shreds. But yeah, they get there on the 20th of May. Find the same port same harbor that they had briefly stopped in on the way down, and like Shackleton later wrote that like they met some children on the way into town who like asked for someone in the town by name, and they were so freaked out that they just ran away. They were like, "Who are these monsters, and why do they know someone's name?" And just like ran off.
That's me anytime someone tries to socialize with me.
Mm-hmm. So the very first objective, now that they have reached civilization finally, is okay, we got to go get those 3 dudes that we left on the south coast. A whaler gets sent around the coast accompanied by the navigator, who shows the way, and by the evening on the 21st, literally the day after that they arrived in the town, they had rejoined the group and they were back and they were safe. The next morning,
and then I have to
morning after that they picked up those 3 guys, Shackleton had already managed to assemble a volunteer crew and acquire the use of a large whaler which had been laid up in the harbor. It wasn't being used at the moment. And like they set out the following morning, like the 22nd, they were already off. As they approached
go back?
Yeah, they were already heading back to Elephant Island to go pick up the rest of the crew that they had to leave behind.
Okay, pick up the crew. I thought they were like, we're doing it again, run it back.
No.
Same. That's what I thought. Yeah. I thought they were like, they got a day to recoup and they're like, let's try it again, boys.
No, remember, because the 6 of them
so they go back. They go back to rescue everyone else.
They go back on the rescue mission now. So now they're in like full rescue mode. They're like, okay, we got to go get everyone. They've abandoned the mission long ago at this point. They're not crossing the Antarctic. Everyone's come to terms with that. They're like, Shackleton specifically is like, I have to get everyone out. I promised them I would come back for them.
They're in like life they're trying to prevent casualties at this point.
Exactly. So literally within 2 days of arriving in this like tiny little whaling town, he's put together a volunteer crew. He's gotten a boat, and they're already like sailing back to Elephant Island to go get the rest of the crew that they had to leave.
Well, I mean, that doesn't surprise me. Like, they probably don't have a lot of time to waste on the survival trip. Like, they're gonna run out of food and supplies and whatnot at some point.
Yeah. So the men who are left behind, I can cut to kind of cut to what's going on over there. Morale was getting bad.
Scene change,
right? Like I
would assume so. The
Shackleton's been gone for a couple weeks now. They like are eating seals and penguins. Like they don't have much rations left. There was a little bit of like distrust among some of the people there. I think Shackleton was really holding everybody together prior to this.
They lost their leader.
Yeah, so they'd left the second in command there. I should know this.
I forgot to.
He's got a cool name.
Spider?
Oh, it wasn't the one that started with Franklin?
It was Frank.
Roger?
Frank Wild.
Blackbeard?
Frank Wild. He's wild. Wild Frank, as we like to call him.
Wild Frank.
Frank Wild.
We do.
He was left second in command, but he just didn't have quite the same charisma and rapport with all of the crew members, and he was starting to get a little hairy, right? The one guy has his feet amputated because they turned gangrenous. The penguins and seals start to dwindle. Many of the crew joked that they would have to eat whoever died first, which was maybe not so joking.
I was going to say that is not a joke. There. Maybe we'll do the Donner Party at some point.
Yeah. Thankfully, Frank Wild also, he kept them to a routine. He kept them busy. He kept them doing stuff, right? They were always out hunting. They were always out fishing. They were always out gathering food, gathering more supplies, whatever they could scrounge up, driftwood, anything they could find. Just keeping things going, keeping things alive and healthy down on Elephant Island. Just trying to like sit tight, basically. The surgery was performed in a candlelit hut. They used the last of their chloroform in their medical supplies.
So romantic.
Yeah. Yep. They held concerts on Saturdays. Anniversaries were celebrated. Holidays were celebrated. But things kept getting worse and worse as time dragged on. So Shackleton, right? He tries this rescue mission. Things seem to be going well. They got the whaler. They're on their way. They get about 70 miles from Elephant Island when they're met with super heavy ice. And the ship they're in is a whaling ship. It's not an icebreaker.
Right? Again?
So what happens is they're like, okay, we cannot get through this ice. We have to turn back. So they turn around and they actually make their way to the Falkland Islands off Argentina. Shackleton and the crew, I think, get dropped off there, and he starts just like contacting everyone. He's like sending messages to the British Navy. He's talking to the Chilean government. He's talking to the Argentinians. He's like, please, we need a boat. Please just give us a boat to get down there and a crew, and we need to go get these guys. They're waiting for us. He makes 2 more attempts with other vessels over the next 3 months, but all of them meet similar problems. They all run into this super heavy ice, and they just can't get through. Finally, in mid-August, Shackleton begs the Chilean Navy to lend him a small steam tug, and they agree, and they set out for Elephant Island. The seas are clear. The ship is able to reach the island on the 30th of August, 1916. All of the crew members were recovered alive. Every single one of them that set out made it out alive. One guy had 2 feet amputated.
That is amazing.
Beyond
How many
that,
dogs?
like there aren't. Yeah.
Yeah. Did any of the dogs make it?
I don't think so. I think they shot them
69 dog casualties might cancel out the 14 surviving men.
Well,
plus because there were litters.
Yeah, plus the litters. So it was more than that in terms of dog casualties. Yeah, and a cat.
They could have just eaten seals.
And 1 cat. Well, but the issue was the dogs were eating more food than the humans were. They could not.
I know.
Maintain them.
Exactly. As soon as you said how many dogs, I was like, the issue isn't that there's dogs; it's that they also have to feed the dogs.
Yeah. I actually the whole Inuit relationship with dogs is really interesting. That would be an interesting episode one day because they're
for
a
sure
lot
we'll have to drop
maintain,
that down.
But they're also super vital to living up there.
I think we could do I think they have 400 words for snow or something like that.
I think that's fake.
I feel like we could just talk about that.
I think that's a fake thing.
I read it in a book in the 6th grade, and I'm holding on to that.
Kayla used to be called Webster in her early days because she knew so many words.
You know what's really funny about that? Is my coworkers have been like pointing out like all the words I use and stuff, and I've avoided telling them that fact.
Oh, if I ever
what's your work
end
email?
up in your building,
I'm gonna email all your coworkers.
No, I know Suki is gonna listen to this episode, so word is out.
Good. Why would you hide that? I would brag about it. I don't care if
it was like I don't know how I could even bring that. It's like I don't think I could bring that up without it being like braggadocious, you know, being like, well, my 3rd grade teacher actually called me Webster.
That's okay. I brought it up for you humbly.
Yeah, there we go. Now they know. No more secrets.
But also remind me, this is reminding me of a really amazing anthropological story about another like Lost in the Winter type thing, and it's also a crime story. I'll send you guys.
Okay, baby. I was gonna say, well, maybe we'll have to bring you back and you can share us a story.
Maybe.
Yeah. So keep it in mind. Keep it in mind.
Yeah.
Okay. So
So 14 men are rescued.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're gonna wrap this up now. They get everyone off Elephant Island. Things were starting to get really bad, right? They get there on December 30th, right? Or August 30th, they get to everyone. They were planning to try for Deception Island, which is another little island down there that they thought had some supplies on it, like a couple days after. Like, it was getting really desperate. They were like, okay, we feel like Shackleton would have been back by now. They probably didn't make it. We're going to have to try to figure something out for ourselves now, right? 2 days before they're going to leave, Shackleton shows up, and they're like, oh my god, rescue. So they rescue everybody, everything's great, right? They get home, and they kind of, like, come back to no fanfare because Britain was just joining World War I there at that time, or the Great War. So their return kind of gets overshadowed by the war, and they really don't get a whole lot of
realistically,
praise.
What did they do? But what did they deserve praise for?
It's not so much what they did.
Causing Navy resources for their rescue?
I think it's less so what they did and more the fact that they were able to escape and survive. You know, it's more of the like
escape from a situation you put yourself in.
Yes, that is true.
You didn't have to go. You did this to yourself.
True.
Yeah.
I think they got the praise they deserved.
They ended up getting like a lot of recognition later. After the war, they got some medals and service stuff and accolades, etc.
For what?
Just for like, I think Shackleton got a lot.
Nick, I could go and sit on a piece of ice for a couple months and then leave.
But would you have survived it? I mean,
they didn't
think about
do
the
anything.
Whole ordeal. I think the thing is like, it's just a really impressive ordeal to survive. Like, the fact that they made it out is incredible.
It is. You're right.
Yeah.
How long were they out there total before the rescue? Do you know?
So, August of 1916 is when they were all safely recovered. They set off in December of 1914. So, by the time they got back to Britain, I think it was almost 2 years they'd been gone. I mean, it was a long time. And then, everyone redistributed to wherever they needed to go and all of that. And that took a while. But yeah, by the time it was like a 2-year ordeal. I think it might have been 1917 by the time everything was all sorted out. So a little over 2 years.
So you get back from this expedition. You're one of these people, right? What's the first thing you do?
If I have a wife, I'm
in a bed
kissing my wife
with a fire.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, I'm eating actual food. I'm eating something that's not a seal, a dog, or a penguin. Or a ration that's 2 years old.
I'm putting on my comfy PJs. I'm lighting the fire. I'm taking a long, cozy nap.
I'm eating a bunch of vegetables and taking the first, normal shit I've had in 2 years.
Yes, some citrus.
Yeah. Fixing the scurvy.
Like a good salad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, but you're in the middle of a war too, so I don't even know if rations are starting out yet. But
war. A lot of them
they probably are. Everything's
probably hard to get. A lot of them
entered
service after returning, which is just mind-boggling to me.
No.
You get back from this and you join
Shackleton
a war.
Also re-entered service. A lot of them were ex-Royal Navy or were like in the Royal Navy but took leave to go on this expedition, so they kind of had commitments to go back. Shackleton ended up seeing a little bit of action in, like, I want to say Russia in the Great War. Not
so
any
a
of the major
cold
fronts.
tundra.
Yeah, I know, right?
Oh, layers of PTSD.
Yeah. Yeah, so
they're like, we should bring the dogs, and he's like, no.
And then in
dogs.
In 1922, Shackleton dies of a heart attack on South Georgia Island while preparing another Antarctic expedition. He's down there to go on yet another expedition. He wasn't that old. He was 47 when he died.
That's old in
when he died?
Yeah, that's true.
What, in like
47. He died at the age of 47.
That's young.
I know.
That's
young. Especially for someone with access. Yeah, but he had access
even in the 1920s. Medical care.
Yeah, he was in the class where he would have had medical care, and I'm sure that this quite honestly, this expedition probably took 50 years off of life.
If you make it out of infancy, like in the 1920s, you have a pretty normal life expectancy.
Mm-hmm.
Life expectancy in the 1920s was upper 50s. So he still died pretty young.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Infancy is really where you're fucked.
So but Antarctica trip, war, another Antarctica trip. I mean, what's he
didn't have like a life of peace ever, it sounds like.
Not really. I think he was really...
He needed to be a part of something.
I think he was kind of haunted by missing out on being the first to the South Pole. I think he really wanted that. And
it sounds like it. He had like something to prove.
The last 20 years of his life
was it the Norwegian flag, or what did you say?
Well, the Norwegians got there first, followed by a different British expedition. Yeah. So there were two expeditions that made it within weeks of each other.
What was the third party?
Yes.
Yeah. It was the Ghost.
Yep. So this kind of leads me to the final thing I want to talk about, which is crisis management, which I think is something that Shackleton is really good at, and it's something that, like, it's kind of a more modern, like, term, but just, like, when things go wrong, like, people who have good reactions to it and know how to handle those situations, like, are good at dealing with stress. Like, how do you handle something like that? Like, if you were Shackleton and you were like, okay, shit, we are stuck in Antarctic sea ice, and then our boat gets crushed.
Yeah, like remaining a good leader.
Yeah. And I think like that's
keeping morale up.
That's really what he is remembered for and gets a lot of credit for, is just like his ability to keep morale high, keep people going, keep
them alive.
Yeah, keep everybody alive.
No one died.
Nobody died. The only people that died were on the other boat, and it was like
that is impressive. That is really impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a double amputation, and that guy survived.
Yeah.
On the stowaway too, they totally could have like been pissed off at him and been like you weren't even supposed to be here. You're taking away supplies. And he was a family after that.
I feel like at that point you're all like trauma bonded. You're like, we're in this together.
Yeah. I think by the time they found the stowaway, it was like too late, and they're like, "Well, we'll put you to work," because he just became a member of the crew. It's like, it was one more mouth to feed, which probably didn't help things, but
Yeah, but the other guy died of a heart attack or scurvy or whatever it was, so they were at the number they expected.
That was the other crew. That was the guy that came back. Yeah, that was Australia.
That was the crew that left from Australia, right? So they never even had contact with them. I mean, other than some telegrams originally to set it up, but there was no they had no idea what was going on the other side. And the other side's not as interesting. I'm sure there's some heroics over there, but really the Shackleton side of it is really impressive. It's just really interesting to think about. Just, could you imagine going through that and then making it out alive and having to keep everybody else?
One of my least favorite things is snowy and cold. So I probably would have never even agreed to go. But then if I did and we got in this situation, right. I would be pretty
And you're
upset.
on an early 1900s sailing vessel. It's not like those are the most spacious luxury, accommodations.
Mm-mm.
And that was when you had a
and
ship
I'm with
still.
13 other smelly men.
Yeah, and then you're sleeping on the ice and snow for months.
Preserve the smell pretty well.
Yeah, that's true. They probably
more
didn't
than
smell
it
too
would
bad.
have.
And they were wearing animal skins,
yeah.
which tend to be relatively smell resistant once they are properly treated and cleaned.
True, it's probably better than like
I'm sure it didn't
a tropical
smell good,
situation.
You know? The penguin, I'm sure the eating penguins and seals all the time.
I wonder what penguin tastes like.
I know.
I don't.
This is interesting too.
You think it's like chicken?
These are some of the few people who have ever actually eaten penguin.
Flubber.
It's like you're not allowed to eat penguin.
Probably really fatty.
Right? They're like a protected species. So
yeah,
I bet they're very fatty. Yeah. But yeah, these are some of the only people in history who have tasted penguin.
I hated that movie.
It made me anxious at times. I'll be honest.
Happy Feet sucks.
And I honestly
I watched that
like it was such a big switch in tone that it was like psychological warfare for me. It was so distressing. I hated it so much.
Yeah,
it hated me.
It's a bad
movie. I hated it so much. It's
the only good
I would not
penguin
rewatch
movie is Surf's Up.
I would rewatch Surf's Up.
Surf's Up is phenomenal.
Better penguin.
Surf's Up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, at least there's that we can agree on. Nick, was that everything you had for us?
Yeah. You guys have any other thoughts?
Okay. I'm trying to think about like why morale was good. Because like this is.
I think he was just a good leader.
But he's post Navy, so there's there's a struggle of that. But like this is before the World Wars happened. Like this is before morale was really boosted and like nationalism was a huge thing. Like he just had that quality. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think he was just like a charmer. Like he could like talk his shit and like he had kept a good front in front of people and then was getting his emotions out in his diary.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he was just I think he was just a good leader.
When he has such a burden of responsibility too.
Yeah, that's really impressive that nobody died during this.
Yeah, and it may have been like quite a few months in between, but they did have very slow milestones that occurred. Like the ice breaking, them finding land, them like certain things that like they were able to use to keep pressing forward. And I'm sure he was able to like.
So yeah, something to be like we're making progress. Versus like last week in Ezekiel's situation, it was just like constant like open water, non-changing for 13 months.
Yeah, just kept getting worse.
And it had other people with them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they had social interaction.
Never had to eat a
Yeah, I wonder if they all stayed friends afterwards.
Yeah, you would.
Were they actually?
I bet they went out with each other, like they
at the pub
rampaging. Honestly, like that's enough to just like be able to like finally have like an actual like social gathering that feels normal with people.
They went out to Camden Town.
Yeah. Probably.
Oh, like you go through all of that, then you die because of stupid man-made war. Mm-hmm. The war to end all wars.
Yeah.
And we never had one again.
Yeah, no more wars. Not a single war.
Mm-hmm.
I thought the Second World War was the war to end all wars because of the nuke.
No, that was the Cold War with the nuke.
Oh wait, yeah.
Yeah, then they got to the second one and they're like, this is the war to end all war.
Yeah.
And then they got to the Cold War and they were like, this might just end all of life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, timeline correct. But yes.
Mm-hmm. They had to do a rebranding.
Do you think we'll ever see a rebranding
of World War II?
I don't know.
No, I don't think there'll be a rebranding just because they went with a numbering system, so we can just keep adding on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a good dark note for us to end of. I'm just going to do some quick housekeeping for us. I want to shout out thank you everyone that listened to episode 2, and thank you to everyone, all 4 of our listeners that listened to episode 1. We got some great positive feedback, and I'm so happy to hear it. I want to shout out our Instagram is at this pod counts. We hit the big 10 this week, a big 10 followers.
That should be 10.
So
here's some more.
Exactly. So if you're one of our followers and you didn't listen to the episode, I want to know what the fuck is up. But let's see if we can get it to 20 followers next week. I also want to shout out, if you're an audio listener and you want to see the video version of this, you can follow us at This Podcast on YouTube. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions for topics, you can email me at thispodcounts@gmail.com. And I also want to give a big thank you to Abby for joining us this week. I think this episode was far beyond and better than last week's. I thank you so much for your contributions and taking time out of your Friday night to spend with us. I really appreciate it.
Of course. I'm just sad that Gail didn't come out, you know?
I felt Gail's spirit for sure. Do you have anything you want to shout out or say before we go?
Mostly I want to shout out that you guys are awesome, and that
oh my gosh, thank you.
Well, okay, these are some of the two best people to have these conversations with, honestly.
I know, this is, I mean, like, in the name of this podcast is Socializing, I really do, like, this is my socializing for the week to, you know, catch up with my friends, and I'm glad that we got to do this together, so.
No, I miss when we used to be able to do this in college all the time.
And exactly. I think that's part of like why I wanted to start to do this is like we're all in different places now and like we don't necessarily get the time to talk unless we schedule it. So I'm glad we got to build this time into Friday and, you know, tell a little story.
Gosh, and these two people know everything. So plenty
everything.
Well,
and don't email us a correction because I don't want to hear it. I'll ignore it.
But no, last week when like Nick just knew everything about scuba gear, I was like,
I know. I was like, because I do kind of want to like, you know, going forward, if I know who the guest is, you know, maybe gear the episode towards something they might know about. And so when I was talking to Nick, I was like, oh my god, he's the perfect guy for this episode, and I didn't even know it.
And you were like, oh, I can't believe I brought on the perfect person. I was like, I was just saying that.
yeah. So it really worked out. So. Yeah, it's fun to see when plans come together like that. Yeah, so thank you so much for joining us. I feel like you had great contributions.
Oh, I thank you. I enjoyed being here. Thank you for having me as your first guest.
I know, so exciting. Hopefully more to come. Okay. Thank you for listening. This episode will be on Spotify and hopefully Apple Podcasts this coming week. So keep a lookout for us, and there should be more episodes this coming Sunday. So we'll see you then. This has been This Podcast Counts as Socializing. Bye, everyone. The end button.